website that really answers a lot of issues on volunteer recruitment, which you'll be seeing Charlie later this afternoon, but also on the fundraising and crowdfunding aspect. So they're here today to enlighten you about some of the mysteries of crowdfunding.
Oh, well, thanks, Allison. Glad to be here.
So sorry. And Jill and Bob, they have some experience with this and working with KidCat, and so they're going to share their experience. And
yeah, and I was going to real quick kind of cover some basics of crowdfunding, some of the things that we've learned as we've done this. And then also after that, Casey was going to give a quick kind of demo of our experiences with the Cancer Resource Center and things that we've learned and things that we've done right, and things that we're continuing to develop. And I think that's crowdfunding is still a really young thing, and so there's a lot of sites out there, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, other places, but it's a really young thing that people are learning a lot about right now. And it's also, for nonprofits, it's got some unique challenges and some unique opportunities, I think. And so that's what GiveGap does, is we really help nonprofits build relationships with the people that help them. And so that whether that's volunteers, donors, or just advocates. And I think one of the things we really want to do is make sure that people that are helping crowdfunding aren't just one-off donors. They aren't just someone that throws in $10 or $20 and never comes back. We want to make sure there's retention and other things. So we really want to kind of have whatever we do fit within the cycle of a much larger kind of mission for a place like Cancer Resource Center or any of our other customers. So for me, I think there's 5 keys to crowdfunding, and they're pretty simple. The great thing about crowdfunding is it's not rocket science, but it's not always super obvious to people either. So we think that these are the 5 keys that you need to make sure that you do to really get an effective crowdfunding campaign. So 1, we put the donor in the story. 2, we make sure it's personal. So personal asks all the time. 3, momentum. 4, enthusiastic public thanks. And 5, have fun. So I'm going to go through each one of these so you guys can write about it if you want. But I'm also going to go through each one of these one at a time. And so one of the most important things is it really is all about the donor. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is really this concept of the U test. And so if you're creating a story on your crowdfunding page or some sort of story, this works really with any sort of fundraising there is at all, whether it's crowdfunding or event funding or any type of funding. You really should think about the U test. And by that we mean you should say you 2 times as often as you say we, me, us, I, or all those words combined. It's got to be about the donor, because really you need to tell the story about your organization and make that inspiring, but it's got to be inspiring to that donor. If it's not inspiring to that donor and they don't feel like they're a part of that in some way, they're not going to donate money. And so just think about it. If you read a story that there's something where that nonprofit seems like a great organization, but you can't see where you fit in or you can help in some way, you're gone. So if you want to get a donation from a person, then you need to talk about them in really specific terms if you can. And that's the great thing about technology, is you can automate using things like using their name, talking about specific things about them that are very key to them. The more that you can make it personal, the more likely it is to actually be effective. One of the things we like to say is that you really want to inspire the donor to battle. And so you want to make it feel like it's, that's kind of a really strong way to put it, but you want to make it feel like you're in a war of some sort, or this is a really important thing, and that they're the key warrior. They need to do something in order to help you win. And it's important to look at it that way. It shouldn't be that strong of a terms, obviously, when you phrase it that way, but if I'm going to be part of an organization, if I'm going to donate my time, my money, if I'm going to be an advocate or really talk about it, I need to feel like I matter to that organization. And so if you want me to be a donor for your group, which is really kind of a basic level of getting people involved with you, then I need to feel like my skills can somehow help you in some way. And so that's something you should always think about. I think another thing that people don't do enough is multiple asks, and you can't. So a lot of people will ask for money somewhere in some sort of, and again, a lot of these are beyond just crowdfunding. This is just kind of basic fundraising, but it really matters in crowdfunding. Is on a campaign, people might ask for a donation one time and feel awkward to ask for it again. But you should really ask for donations multiple times. You should give kind of a menu of ways for people to give, because they're kind of casually looking at what you're doing. They need to have calls to action. They need to know what you want them to do. So it's great to ask for, make a donation, have that on 5, 6 times, having it in multiple ways, having it in multiple formats, having it, You know, one of the things we do on GiveGab is we actually have a menu of, we'll give 4 examples of what a dollar amount might do for that organization. But then we also have just make a general donation. And then later in the copy, there's little links where you could make a donation. It's just, it hits you with everything so that the person goes through when they're reading this. Because you've got to remember, when someone's looking at what you're doing, they have a life, they have a million things to do. So they're kind of casually looking at it. So no matter where they're looking in your material, if they're just glancing at the bottom of the page, they should still get a message to make a donation. So you really got to push that. And then I think, you know, one thing you want to do is make a promise that makes a difference. So people don't want to just throw money into a black hole. They want to know what you're going to do with the money. And so I think the promise really matters for twofold. They want to know what, you know, why are you raising this money? Why does that matter? But they also, you need to follow up with that promise. And so that's something we really think about a lot at GiveGab, is really how do we make it easy for you to continue the stewardship of following through to make sure that people are continuing to be engaged with what you're doing. And I think if they make a donation and they feel like you did great with that, I think they're going to donate again. And that's a hugely important thing, because retaining donors is really difficult. Retention numbers are generally low across the board. They're higher for some organizations than others, and I think the reason they're higher is because if people make a donation and then they feel in their heart that they did something great with this that really matters, you're going to get them again, over and over again. But if they don't feel like that they know what happened with the money, then they're just not going to think about you. And the next year they're going to pick somebody else that they think might do better. Another thing that we really like to push is this concept of personal asks. And so one thing that I think a lot of people do when they start crowdfunding is that they'll make a page, you know, so you could go on any crowdfunding site, and a lot of them can just make a page to help be a fundraising champion yourself. So you have a general page, and then if you're running an event, participants might be fundraisers, so they have their own page and they explain why they want to raise money. And I think that a really common thing for them to do is, I'm going to share this to Facebook. Problem solved, I'm all done. You know? It's a really easy thing to do. And what we've seen is that Facebook shares will get you a fair amount of likes, but they won't get you donations. And so it's still good to do the Facebook share, because that creates engagement. You want that. But you have to make personal asks. Facebook shares are very low, so this is just an example. If you had several hundred friends and you shared to Facebook, a reasonable expectation is $0 in donation. That's a reasonable expectation. You might get some, but I think you're more likely to get 0 than any other number. So you can't just share and be done with it. You know, another thing that people like to do is email blasts, and so just a general kind of blast to all your email recipients. And so this definitely works better. But what we've seen already, and we've seen this in other research too, and look, this varies completely by who you are. If this is an email blast from the nonprofit itself, I think it works better. But if it's from a fundraising champion, I think the rates get a little bit lower. Because you're sending messages to your friends, except you just told your friend they're not that important because they got an email that everyone else got. And so they might respond, but it's still lower. So on this example, I should have put the column of you know, the kind of data I'm putting into this. But let's just say you had 150 people that you emailed at once, which is a considerable number for just an average person. If they sent that to someone, they could expect maybe 2 gifts out of 150 emails. And so since the average gift on our site is about $67, you can expect to receive about $135 by doing email blasts. And a lot of times you still have to do multiple email blasts to get that result. And so you could be alienating other people who are getting emails that are just generalized emails. However, personal asks are super powerful, and this is one thing we've seen already. If people send specific emails that are personal to that person, you think be personal to that person? I guess that's no mistake. But if you send out personal asks, we've seen that about 70% of the time, if you follow through, you'll get to that person to donate. And so if you follow through is an important part of that, because about 30 to 40% of people will donate right away when they get a personal ask from a friend or someone they care about. Another 30 to 40% will say they're going to donate, and then they won't do it because they'll procrastinate, they won't get around to it, there's multiple reasons. If you follow through with them, they will also donate. So if you can just get your fundraising champions that are part of your event, participants, whoever, just to ask 10 people and follow through, they're going to get 7 donors each on average and raise, you know, several $100s each. And so it can really add up. So getting people to make those personal asks that's the whole ballgame, really. Not to say you shouldn't share to Facebook, you should. Not to say you shouldn't tweet it out, you should do all these things. But personal asks are massively important, and the data backs that up. Another thing we want to talk about is really keeping momentum. And momentum is king in crowdfunding or event funding, anything like that. And so no one wants to donate to losers. I think that's a really harsh way to put it, but I think when people see a campaign that has 0% donated, it's just human nature to think, well, everyone else decided this was a bad place to donate. And so the first 10 or 20 or 30% has to come from your core circle, because it's not going to just come from someone at random. If I look at a campaign and I've never heard of them and they don't have any donors, I'm going to assume they're like an empty restaurant. The food must not be good there. So I don't want to be the first donor. Everyone wants to be the last donor. No one wants to be the first donor. That's just kind of how it works. And so one thing you really want to do is you want to get a core group of people to kind of seed campaigns. You want to get 10 or 20 people to agree to donate right away and have those donations out there either on day one when the campaign is released or even ahead of time if you can, so you can create some sort of momentum. One thing we like to say, and we've seen this over and over, is that the first 30% is harder than the last 70%. It doesn't seem like that makes sense, but every campaign that we've had that has reached 30% has reached 100% so far. It's going, it's been pretty consistent with that. 30% by a certain time, usually about halfway through the campaign, if you can get to 30%. It makes a huge difference. And again, I already talked about this before, avoiding the black hole, but really people want to feel like they want, if you have a campaign and you've set a goal, then what you've communicated to that person is you need, let's just say the goal is 10 grand. You've said to a potential donor, we need $10,000. So they don't want to throw money in to a campaign that's not going to reach its goal, because then they're going to think to themselves, well, I just threw my money away because they didn't get enough to do whatever it is they want to do, so they can't do whatever it is they want to do. And so I guess it was a waste. I mean, I think that's just kind of the logic of donors. So they want to feel like whatever you're going to do, you're going to accomplish what you're doing. And so that's why pre-seeding is crucial, but fundraising champs are also key. Because the great thing about getting people to agree to help you fundraise is, one, they will, all of them have to make a donation themselves. So if you have 10 fundraising champions, you start off with 10 donations right there. But the other thing that's great about them is they each set their own goals. So if you have a much bigger goal for a campaign, 10 or 20 or $30,000, each of your fundraising champions could have a goal of $500 or something lower. And so what's nice about that is when I come in, I don't see this massive giant goal if I've been invited to this fundraising champion. I see a goal of 500 and that donor might have already given $100, so they're at 20%. And I feel pretty good because I think my donation of $50 matters. It's a big chunk of 500. It's a very small chunk of $30,000. And so fundraising champions are a crucial thing. It's hard to get people to start being a fundraising champion, but as soon as they get those first few donors, they will do great. And this is one of the things we always, in the lines of momentum, we always talk about getting them to build up confidence. And an example I like to give is I used to play basketball in a past life, and one of the things, my confidence rose and fell with every single game. It's just how it was. So I always wanted to make a couple layups in the game to start the game. Then I felt much better. I had a couple shots I made, and then I could start taking other shots. But if I missed the first few shots, I was always convinced that I was a terrible player. I mean, it's just how it works when you're a 20-year-old basketball player. So we really want to help fundraising champions get some layups. Tell them to ask their mom. Tell them to ask their husband. Tell them to ask, whoever. I mean, you want to ask someone you know who's going to donate. And you get a couple yeses, you start to feel good. You start to think you're a pretty good fundraiser. And it really does work that way. We've seen kind of the data on our site. Getting people to make the first couple asks when they're a fundraising champion is super hard. But once they get 1 or 2 donations, it starts to pick up really fast. And the next thing you know, we actually just had a campaign that did this thing. They had 10 fundraising champions. In a weekend, all fundraising champions were tied for first place with $0 raised. It was pretty bad. And so we at least got them to donate to their own campaign and get one other person to donate to them, which was usually a close relative or somebody that was really close to them. And we could see right away they started asking, and pretty soon, less than a week later, the top one had over 1,000, second place was 800, and they started to compete with each other. And I mean, you really have to kind of create that momentum. So you always want to think in terms of momentum. Then, this is something that seems obvious, but people forget to do this all the time. And I can tell you, I've made multiple donations to multiple nonprofits since we really started focusing on fundraising. And most of them do not do a very good job of thanking people. And so you really want to make sure you thank people. One thing we say is no thanks equals no retention. So if you don't want them to come back, then the best way to do that is don't thank them. And so you also want to remember that just because that person made that donation doesn't mean you're done with them. Happy donors multiply. And we've seen this especially in crowdfunding. There's multiple times where you can come back to the group of people that have donated to your campaign during the course of your campaign or your event and say, hey, you know, we're getting closer to a certain milestone. If everyone here asked one other person, we would jump really quickly, and you'll see that they'll jump. You know, that works. They want to be part of the winning campaign, so they'll help. But you have to have thanked them. You have to have made them feel important, or they're not going to do those sort of things. So these types of things really help quickly. And so one of the things that people do in kind of the donation world a lot, in the fundraising world, is they segment people. And so, there's multiple ways to segment people, but some people like to go by the kind of 4 quadrants where you have new donors, and then you have returning donors, and the ones that have donated above average, and the people that have donated average or below, and you want to kind of treat them differently. What's great about crowdfunding is there's a lot of new donors, and you can easily see this, but if you have someone that's a returning donor that you see, if you're watching your crowdfunding campaign, and you have someone who's a returning donor, who's donated a lot, but then just throws in an extra 20 bucks, you want to thank them as if they gave all, you don't want to make them feel like they're just an ordinary donor if they also give 50 grand at the end of the year. You want to make sure you really thank them in a special way for kind of contributing to a campaign when they've already donated. So some of this is just, you kind of have to look through your list as you're going and see who's making donations, and just keep considering, how do I make this person feel special and important? And like I said earlier, how do I make them feel like they're the key warrior in this battle that we need to help us get to where we need to go? And then one thing we like to say also is the 3-3-3 rule. And so you should thank them 3 times, and you should thank them in this amount of time. 3 minutes, 3 days, 3 months. And so 3 minutes, it really should be 3 seconds. And that's give gabs. They need to be thanked right away. If they made a donation, mostly that's confirmation, so they know the technology worked. So if they put their credit card through, they want to see a thank you really fast, or they're going to think something messed up. They also should be thanked in some way in 3 days. This is one of those things where it's a kind of a follow-up thank you. This is something that we're actually considering adding in Give Gab, either an automated thank you from us or an automated reminder to the nonprofits to thank people within 3 days, because they need to continue to feel special. So just that first automated one, they know is automated, and it does make them feel good, but they want something to follow that up. Even if it's another automated one that's phrased differently, that's still better than nothing, But if they just donated 500 bucks, you should pick up the phone and say thank you. It's a really quick thing. Or at the very least, send them a personal email or just a quick note, anything that's real fast. And then the final one is 3 months. The 3 months is really a thank you with, here's what happened with the campaign, because usually that's after the fact. But it's also a great time to follow up with a survey. It's a great time to follow up with just kind of stewardship, or letting, kind of seeding them for the next campaign in a way. Because what you could do in 3 months is you can say, thank you so much, we accomplished our goal, this did great. And oh, by the way, in a couple of months we'll be running this campaign. I'm just letting you know, I'm not asking anything now, but thank you. And at least they've heard about it a little before. And then the final thing we really want to push is have fun. It needs to be fun. And so one of the examples I like to give is that I knew a guy, he wasn't a close friend, but he was someone I knew. He got ALS maybe 10 years ago. And that's, honestly, if you've ever seen anyone with ALS, it is the worst disease. I've never seen anything worse than that. To just watch him kind of fade away and die in a year, a guy that was super athletic, to just have his body crumble, it was absolutely awful. So you would think that ALS, of all people, when they went to raise money, would make sure that they were serious and somber, because they don't want to have fun if they're raising money for such a serious disease. But how did they raise money last year? They raised money by dumping ice on their heads. That's how ALS decided to raise money. Because if they went the serious route, which is not look, you can raise money the serious route, but the fun route really gets energy going. And so if ALS can choose to do something fun and playful, then your nonprofit really doesn't have an excuse to go the fun route, because it really works, and really ultimately people want to feel the joy of giving. So if you make it too serious and you stay away from having fun, which I think is something that's tempting for a lot of nonprofits to do, I think you're costing yourself a lot of energy. or a potential energy that could be part of your campaign. And then if you think it through, if you think the ALS Challenge campaign last year, if you think about it, they really did all of the things that were really important. So if you go back up to this original list, part of the reason why that worked is they put the donor in the story. Every single video you saw was about that person who just made a donation. They made personal asks. They didn't have general shares. General shares would not have worked. They had 3 specific people. They called them out. That's as personal as it gets. They made sure there was momentum, and you could see the momentum because you could see it all over your Facebook page. It seemed like some sort of crazy thing. And then there was this enthusiastic public thanks at the beginning of every video. They thanked the person that asked them, who felt great because they essentially are thanking that person for also making a donation from the one before. So when you do all these things well, it works. It really works. And so, like I said, this isn't rocket science, but if you follow these steps, you're going to have a really successful campaign event. So, and then Casey was going to give a quick demo.
Yeah.
If you guys have any questions first, though, or anything, I'm happy to.
Not yet.
All right.
Okay.
Or you can wait. Did you have one?
I can wait and see if it gets covered.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to give you guys a tour around GiveGap. So this is GiveGap, and I'm logged in as Charlie. I'm going to sign you up to be a fundraising champion for every campaign. All right, so as Charlie had kind of mentioned before, GiveGap is really a platform for everybody that kind of supports your organization. So people that volunteer for you, people that donate money, like, you know, they can all come together on GiveGap, and you can, keep things organized and manage them. So it's, a place for all of your supporters. So I want to show off our friends at the Cancer Resource Center on the Finger Lakes. So I worked with Jill to create their profile on GiveGap. So this is their profile, this is their main page, and you can see that it's branded. So that was something that we heard a lot from nonprofits, that they wanted some of their branding within GiveGap, so things felt more consistent throughout. So if you're on the Cancer Resource Center's page and you switch over to our page to donate, like there's still some common themes and elements. So that's something that we provide. You can see that their volunteers have donated, 22 hours on GiveGab. That's not accurate in any way. I'm sure they have tons of volunteers. But through GiveGab, people that are logged in hours, they've logged 22 hours. They have 89 members on GiveGab. That's fantastic. And this is how much they've raised to date on GiveGab. So you can see, you can start following the organization. You can share it to Facebook. I can see the admin dashboard right here. I'll take you through that in just a second. But ways to give. So I support the Cancer Resource Center. I have a relationship with them. I want to know how I can give back, how I can engage with them. So right away I see that they have some fundraising campaigns going on. They have a lot. And they have some volunteer opportunities down here. So again, it's about people that support your organization, people that want to volunteer for you, and people that want to donate. Let's take a look at this awesome event. This event is on Sunday. I think I'm having a problem with my screen size. It isn't quite right.